As part of World Ayurveda Podcasts, we bring to you conversations with global ambassadors of Ayurveda. In this episode, we have with us a very esteemed guest, one who was born in the West but is a guru in the Vedic tradition and is recognized as a Vedacharya, Dr. David Frawley, or better known as Pandit Vamdev Shastri. Dr. David Frawley is a Vedic teacher, Vedacharya, and author of 40 published books on yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedic studies, translated into 20 languages worldwide. He has also writes on educational and civilizational concerns relative to India and Vedic culture. He has received a Padma Bhushan Award from the President of India, D.Lit, Doctor of Letters from S. Vyasa University, and a National Eminence Award from SIES, South Indian Education Society. He is director of the American Institute of Vedic Studies in the United States, which offers training in Vedic knowledge systems, including online courses with numerous students worldwide. He frequently visits India and is associated with many Vedic organizations in different countries. He's regarded as one of the pioneers in the global spread of yoga and Ayurveda over the last several decades, and is promoting a new view of the Vedas as a global heritage. Dr. Frawley, welcome. I am, to say the least, rather pleased to have this opportunity to have this discussion with you. So to begin, Dr. Frawley, I believe you grew up in the US. May I ask you how and when did you first discover Ayurveda and what inspired you to study it as a science?
Yes, thank you, Rami, for that kind introduction. I'm very happy to be with you. Now, as to your question, I was born in the United States in 1950, half of the last century. And in my late teenage years, we were also in an era in which Indian influences were coming over through various gurus, yoga, Maharishi, TM, Yogananda, all these things. So I was exposed to that at a young age, and I found it resonated better with me than the other philosophies and kind of life guidance that was available. So my first connection was with yoga and Vedanta, but yoga more in the meditational sense, pranayama, Kriya Yoga, Vedanta. And yet, at a personal level, I was always a bit of a naturalist. I had an early interest in the herbs. So that continued, and then I discovered the Ayurvedic connection with the yoga and Vedanta. And so my two interests combined very well. And fortunately, I came into contact with Ayurvedic teachers both in India and the West at a young age. So I was able to be exposed to that at a time when really nobody even knew what the term Ayurveda was, what it meant, or what its relevance. So that was my background, and I continued with it. And then I continued discovering the connections between the different Vedic disciplines, yoga, Vedanta, Ayurveda, Jyotish, Vastu, and that became my work to help spread these.
Well, that's really fascinating, for us to hear that you were in the US and you were introduced to these studies at such an early age. But for someone who has never heard of Ayurveda, how would you explain it to them in simple terms? And why do you think would they be interested to learn about Ayurveda? And they should be.
Well, it's very simple. Ayurveda is, first of all, the medicine, the healing power of nature that unlocks the forces of nature for us, both within and around us, whether it is the natural energies working within our own bodies and minds, whether it's the properties of foods, herbs, massage, exercise, pranayama, mantra, meditation. It is a kind of universal language, not only of healing, but of self-knowledge, self-realization, and helps us understand all the different factors of our lives, from waking and sleep to the food we eat. So it is relevant to everyone. And I don't think there is another natural healing tradition that has been so well preserved, that has such yogic and spiritual depth. And since yoga is now more known to people, people can also see the relevance of Ayurveda. And it's not just, again, physical healing, spiritual healing, psychological healing, self-realization for all.
Correct. I think when you say that it's the healing power of nature, I think, that really resonates with a lot of people today who are sort of being pulled towards more natural, alternative ways of lifestyle than ever before. So I think that, you truly answered our question on why it is relevant and why they should be a part of this world of Ayurveda. But, you have also maintained that Ayurveda enables one to gain complete harmony and balance in body and mind so that we can discover our true self and in one that is one with all. In sync with this, Dr. Frawley, what are your views on Ayurveda as a contemporary health science, and uh, how does this enable this to happen?
Yes, first of all, of course, Ayurveda is well established in India as a practice, as a discipline, teaching programs, practitioners. It's also recognized by the World Health Organization, and it's also become recognized in a number of countries, and mainly in the Western world. Actually, here I can speak of North America, South America, Europe, in fact, Australia, the whole planet. It is recognized as a yogic system of medicine, meditative system of medicine, herbal system, massage, and above all, helping us understand our individual constitution, mind, body type, and how the different aspects of our nature as body, prana, senses, mind, Atman, connect. And so Ayurveda has gained popularity in a number of fields: yogic circles, herbal circles, massage areas, wherever natural healing is there, meditation, mind-body medicine. It has also moved with the Indian diaspora to different countries. And now even in America today, I can go to my local natural food store and find a significant amount of Ayurvedic herbs, for example. There are Ayurvedic practitioners in most cities in the country, and Ayurveda is now part of most of the yoga centers. And anyone concerned with naturopathic medicine, natural healing, Ayurveda is one of the key components now.
Absolutely. I think that is so true. Even in India, we've noticed, let alone in the West, we've noticed such a resurgence of interest in the natural sciences and Ayurveda and yoga. I think, there's it's only going to gain speed from here on. But I am very fascinated to hear that if you go to a local store, that you can find so many herbs used in Ayurveda. That is news to us. But Dr. Frawley, your book, Ayurveda and the Mind, The Healing of Consciousness, explores the psychological aspect of the system of Ayurveda. And mindfulness has become one of the most noted trends of this decade. There are also applications which are allegedly, helping people to gain mindfulness. How do you think Ayurveda helps in the healing of the mind? Of course, it helps the healing of the body, and we've seen yoga and we've seen Ayurveda work together to achieve that. But where does the mind fit in here?
Well, you have to understand there's different aspects of Ayurveda. It has its treatment for the physical body and balancing the doshas, but it has its whole Sattva Vijaya treatment, which involves the Yoga Sutra approach to the mind for dealing with psychological issues, where Rajas and Tamas are the main doshic or factors of disease. So the psychological aspect has long been integrated into Ayurveda, which follows the view of mind and consciousness of yoga and Vedanta. And it says that our true self is beyond the mind. Our true self is pure consciousness, which is also pure prana. So in the Vedic and yogic meditational approaches, we learn to access that ability to observe the mind from the standpoint of the seer, the Atman or Purusha. And that is a kind of mindfulness as well as a kind of transcending the mind in the sense of going beyond the conditioned patterns of the mind. Ayurveda also has special herbs, major rasayanas that help with the mind. It has special psychological profiles relative to doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. So it integrates the other factors of the physical Ayurveda into the psychological Ayurveda, into the spiritual Ayurveda. Just as yoga has asana, but it also has pranayama, mantra, meditation for dealing with the whole of life. So the mind is the key component of Ayurveda and what makes it special. It's not just about treating an inert body with chemicals. It's about helping us understand our mind and particularly understand not only the world of nature, but our true nature that is one with the entire universe.
Out of personal interest, as I've been a student of religious studies, if somebody who's interested in Ayurveda wanted to learn more about it, or even yoga for that matter, if they come from a different religious background, does the idea of pure consciousness appeal to them?
Well, we see today that most people, particularly in the West, are not so controlled or rooted by a religious belief. There are also ecological ideas, psychological ideas, dharmic traditions, not only on this Veda, Vedanta, yoga, Buddhist traditions, Jain traditions have had some influence. So people do want to understand themselves, self-knowledge, self-empowerment. They want to connect to nature. They are open to the idea of cosmic intelligence, universal consciousness. And if there is a universal consciousness, how can that be apart from us? It can only be part of us. It can only be our inner self. So we do see a lot of interest. There are certain religious groups or even medical groups that may criticize Ayurveda-related teachings. But overall, there is a great resonance for them developing, which we expect to continue for the future.
Oh, well, that's fantastic. Dr. Frawley, moving on to my next question. In your words, Ayurvedic psychology must employ the tools and views of yoga. Could you explain a little more on what these synergies between these two sciences, Ayurveda and yoga, are?
Yes. Well, first of all, yoga has been scaled down and misunderstood as mere asana. There's nowhere in yogic literature that yoga is defined as asana. And the purpose of asana is to heal the body and detach from the body. It is not simply to become more physically oriented. So if we look at Yoga Sutras is about control of the mind, calming the mind, developing sattva guna, moving beyond the mind. Yoga Sutras has the klesha theory of disease, which is all psychological, starting with avidya or lack of true knowledge. It teaches us how to balance the dualities of the mind. And its main focus is meditation and the foundation for meditation, which is not only asana, but pranayama, mantra, dharana, and all these different things. When we understand yoga as meditation and yoga as part of the psychological, spiritual aspect of Ayurveda, it all becomes very clear.
Yes, it does. And in your talks and writings, you have maintained studying Vedanta as essential for anyone interested in knowing Ayurveda. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh yes, you have to understand Ayurveda is an integral part of Vedic knowledge. It is said to be a Vedanga, it is said to be an Upaveda, or a secondary branch of the Vedas, and the branch of the Vedas that deals with healing of body and mind, and also that prepares us for any deeper sadhana. It's part of right living, dharmic living that the Ayurvedic lifestyle teaches us. And the philosophy behind the Vedic knowledge is the Vedanta. It has a number of branches and forms. it also crosses over with some other teachings. So anything Vedic has to be connected to the Vedanta. And even Ayurvedic classics like Charak and Shishrut mention not only yoga, but Vedanta, Vedas. They mention the importance of all the kind of tapas and dharmic values, yamas, niyamas, as the basis for psychological healing and right living overall. So there is a Vedantic philosophy, which is the psychology also, psychology of Ayurveda, and also recognize the overall connection of yoga and Vedanta. When we get to the deeper teachings, the two terms are often used interchangeably, like in the works of Adi Shankara.
Correct. But Dr. Frawley, isn't Vedanta like a study? And I ask this for a lot of our viewers who are interested, so interested in yoga, so interested in Ayurveda, but maybe unclear in the basics. Isn't Vedanta a study that you really do devote your entire life to? And there is a huge amount of commitment, and also that it is necessary to learn it from a guru or an acharya.
Yes. Well, if I was just looking at some of Shankara's works last night, they're mainly concerned with teaching us how to have discrimination, detachment, calm, how to go beyond the emotions, how to move beyond kind of all the illusions or the ignorance of the mind. They put a tremendous emphasis on chitta shuddhi or chitta shodhana,
Yes.
which is the not only purification, but the calming of the mind and the emotional nature, which is basically psychology. And they talk about the different values, the different attitudes, the different types of self-discipline you have to have in order to lead a peaceful life. So that is an integral part of Vedanta overall. And all these teachings, of course, even Ayurveda was traditionally studied with a guru. And of course, we live in that era today. We, of course, now have internet and media guru connections, all of that. But we no longer have that personal intimacy of instruction, but there are available teachers and teachings, organizations that have put out very excellent teachings on whether it's Ayurveda or the Vedanta. I was close with Swami Dayananda, Chinmaya Mission. We always had Ayurveda there. With Swami Dayananda, we did a whole program on Ayurveda and the mind, Ayurvedic psychology. So these factors are there, they're available. And it may not be you're going to find the ideal guru, but definitely you can find someone who can help you in a place where you can begin. You take one step and you'll find there are other steps you can take beyond that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dr. Frawley, you also pioneered the study of Vedic astrology in the West, and you also run a course of Ayurvedic Vedic astrology. Can you share more about the connection between the two sciences? And also, what would you say to someone who considers this aspect to be contrary to the scientific recognition of Ayurveda?
Yes. Well, first of all, we teach the integral connection of all the Vedic disciplines, as in the Vedas, the different aspects of yoga, Upavedas, Vedanga. So this includes yoga, Vedanta, Sankhya, Tantra, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Raja Yoga, Hatha Yoga. Jyotish is certainly part of that. Vastu is another part of that. So we share that entire model. The importance of Jyotish is it helps us understand our karma. It helps us understand why we are here. And it helps us understand ourselves and the different levels of our nature. And so it has a very important role. And many Ayurvedic teachers, gurus have brought that out, as well as yoga teachers. Gurus, Yogananda, all of this. But at the same time, it's a technical discipline that requires special study, but much can be learned. And we must understand is that Vedic science is a science of consciousness. Modern science is a science of the outer. It is a science based on name, form, number, and experiment with the external world via various instruments and equipment. Vedic science is a meditative science of consciousness, direct experience in our own minds and deeper awareness. So it has a different dimension of approach. So we need to recognize not only the validity of the material science, but also the science of consciousness. Some of science is moving in that direction. I think physics may be more so than biology. But we must remember the universe dwells within us, as Upanishads say. We have to have a broader view. And a lot of the trouble we're having in the world today is because we're not moving into a broader naturalistic, cosmic, universal view. We're more caught up in just the physical issues of the human being.
Correct. Absolutely, Dr. Frawley. And, I think it's so important what you said about the fact that we have to increase and widen our realm of understanding of, of what the different sciences can be. And, we've only ever looked at for a very long time the material sciences. And I think the world naturally is moving back to the science of consciousness and understanding it better, of course, with people like you at the forefront. But may I go on my next question, which is several ancient Indian sciences such as yoga, Ayurveda, and meditation are gaining a lot of popularity in the West. Why do you think it is particularly happening now? I know, I do know that it happened in the 60s and maybe in the 70s, as you mentioned earlier, but there seems to be a resurgence in the West and a deep interest in understanding this, not just superficially, but in depth. Why do you think this has happened? What has changed?
Well, there's certainly much more global communication, access to knowledge, information, people traveling. And I also want to let you know that we're not just talking about the United States or even UK. There's tremendous, even greater interest in Ayurveda and Vedic subjects in Russia, in Eastern Europe, even to a great extent in Western Europe. There's a great deal of interest growing in countries like Brazil, South America, Mexico. So it's become a global phenomenon, not just, kind of an English-based American phenomenon. But that is also increasing. Also, again, we have, of course, the Indian diaspora. So there are more things that one can see and explore. There are many Ayurvedic doctors who have immigrated to the West, who are starting centers, who travel globally. So this sharing has a lot to do with it. And the fact is that we do need a new consciousness to deal with our world, our technology, ecology, and yoga, Ayurveda, Vedanta shares that at a very deep level, whereas a lot of the older philosophies in the West have been kind of simply merely materialistic, ideological, political, or based upon supporting one community over another. So the deeper views behind these Indic traditions are gaining interest, and many people are adapting them as their own and adapting them in their own environment and culture, because the Vedic knowledge, including Ayurveda, as a way of self-knowledge, says that you have to have a way of life that addresses you, your unique circumstances in time and space and culture, your karma, the karma of the world, and understand how the mind works, the body works, how nature works. This is not a technical discipline. You must observe your breath. You must see the effect of the foods upon you.
But, additionally, don't you also, would you actually agree if this was also a way towards larger diplomacy? Because you said that, global communication has increased, the Indian diaspora has made it so popular. Has this not brought better understanding and communities closer?
Well, you're talking about the cultural issues and the diplomatic sharing, the soft power. That is very important, because when people think of India, the first part of the Indian heritage is this yogic, Vedantic, dharmic, spiritual traditions and traditional ways of life, rituals, temples, dance, all the rest of it. That's what people think about of India, the traditional culture, and they want to see that preserved and shared and expanded. And so we are seeing that. And now, of course, you have a government in India that wants to share that and promote that more traditional image of India and accept its global relevance. It's not just a question of say, okay, we're supporting a tradition. No, you're supporting a universal way of life. There are many also great indigenous traditions throughout the world, ancient traditions that need to be protected, restored. We see that on various different levels. So Ayurveda, yoga, these are Vedanta, these are key aspects of India's cultural outreach, not simply as one nation to another, but as a civilization, one of the, perhaps the oldest and most vast civilization, at least in terms of art and culture and inner experiential spirituality. So that civilizational sharing, I think, is part of this. And there's a civilizational churning going on. We need a broader view of civilization than just our old nationalistic, mundane, or commercial, or kind of multinational business oriented. We need to get back to the idea that human civilization should integrate into the universe of consciousness and not just simply be man against nature or man against man or one country against another. Broader vision is required. And Indic traditions, Dharmic traditions have these, and Ayurveda brings that into the physical body and daily life of each person.
Wonderful. Dr. Frawley, Ayurveda is also about 5,000 years old, or even more than that, and we are living in, such times of artificial intelligence. Why do you think the next generation will care about it?
Yes, that's very important because we are living in this technological era. But what we must recognize is that if the technology is our guru, we are only machines. We cease to be human beings. To use technology properly, we need a higher consciousness that can observe the technology from a standpoint of nature, the universe, civilization, human values, that sees the technology as a tool, not as something that's going to tell us who we are and what we have to do. Technology is just reflecting what we put into it at a mechanical level. So our hope is that the technology can free us from the outer drudgery, so we have more time for meditation, mantra, art, creativity, all of these things that were traditionally all over the world regarded as the essence of human culture. When people had time, wealthy people, particularly aristocracy who could afford it, they cultivated music, dance, study of various types. So that we need, and we shouldn't let the technology tell us who we are, what we should do, how we should think. That's falling from our deeper human nature. We need to cultivate that inner awareness. So the yoga and Ayurveda, Vedanta give us the vision, the consciousness, the state of seeing, so that we can use our technology in an objective way without becoming dominated by it, without the technology telling us who we are. We need to direct the technology as to how to make our lives better, how to make the planet better, and how to make us better citizens of the entire cosmos, not just of one particular locale or another.
Thank you, Dr. Frawley. I think, that's absolutely, that's the lens that we should be looking at the next generation and what will come with the next generation. Higher consciousness should be observing technology and not the other way around. And I think the point that you made about technology, allowing us more time instead of taking up all our time, is exactly the lens that we should be looking at technology with. And I think that snippet of knowledge that you've just given us would be very useful to the younger viewership that we have. Dr. Frawley, what is your vision for the future of Ayurveda, let us say in a decade from now, Ayurveda in 2030, maybe?
Yes. Well, today, of course, we have this pandemic that is restructuring medicine, that is restructuring even how certain ideas are presented. And that is kind of clouding over various factors. For example, a lot of the yoga classes that were traditionally, or in the modern world, filled with people, that model is now being reduced with all the social distancing. In a number of places, the studios are closed down. In Ayurveda, the direct contact we had has been reduced somewhat. It varies by states here and by country. But the relevance of these teachings is greater because they teach us how to develop physical, psychological, we could even say spiritual immunity, resilience, how to connect to the prana of nature, how to calm the mind in all this period of psychological unrest, how to understand the properties of foods and herbs and exercise so we do what is right for us or best for us as individuals according to our nature and constitution. So in the long run, there is a tremendous relevance for this Ayurvedic and its related approaches. And now it's expanding through internet and communication, through courses, books, publications that way. We've taken all of our courses online to help people and make them accessible, which gives us students from all over the world. As the situation opens up over time, the travel, the communication, direct contact will be more possible. But let me say it very clearly, unless we develop a way of life and the civilization in harmony with our own nature, the earth, our body is our earth. We have to respect our own bodies just as we honor the earth and our ecology. Our different organic systems, breathing, circulation, etc., are like ecological systems. We need to honor those to be healthy and happy. We need to have a sense of the sacred. We need to honor the mind. We can't just be involved with stimulation, distraction, entertainment, all those things. We need to restore our connection to the greater universe. And the interesting thing is most of this is something we can do for ourselves. We need help and guidance, but we don't necessarily have to get very expensive drugs, equipment, or whatever. Retreats are very important, going into nature, communication with other people of these, sharing these deeper understandings, teachers, gurus, and so forth. So it's definitely going to continue to grow, and maybe under some modification. I think the psychological and the yogic aspect of Ayurveda needs to be brought in. Ayurveda is very important for treating diseases. For example, in India, it's very important for conditions like diabetes and heart disease. It helps with immunity, but more so, it helps with our entire human nature, extending to our universal nature or inner consciousness. So the future belongs to these deeper teachings. Of course, we as human beings have many ups and downs in our personal lives and in our countries. So we need to maintain this broader vision that connected to our deeper awareness, we can overcome all difficulties. And Ayurveda, yoga, all these things teach us that and show us the way forward.
Well, Dr. Frawley, thank you so much, because you've sort of, given us a snapshot of where these sciences are going, and the future looks, really bright, And I think it's great that people are coming back to it. And I think, as you said, it's become important to people to honor their mind and to treat their body, the way they would treat, the earth. And it's one and the same. And I think on that note, I would say that this has been a very enlightening and insightful conversation to have, to make these areas clearer to us. And, for you to have shared your expertise with us has been nothing short of wonderful. So thank you so much, Dr. Frawley. And thank you for joining us. I'd also like to say to our viewers and listeners that we will be back with another episode of the World Ayurveda Podcast, and we do hope that you'll all be able to join us again. Thank you very much. Namaskar.